Time for an NOQ report news update.
NOQ report news update on now with Cam Edwards of the Second Amendment Foundation. In case you don't know who Cam Edwards is, well, I'm going to tell you, he's originally from Oklahoma City, Oklahoma. He worked morning drive time radio. He grew up in a gun-free household. When he became a husband and a father in his mid-20s, that persuaded him to buy his first firearm for protection. He owns less than 42 guns. We don't know exactly how many. He's hosted Cam and Company radio show at NRA News, and he's currently editor at bearingarms.com. He lives in a 40-acre farm in the appropriately named Farmville, Virginia, and is a member of the Board of Citizens of the Committee to Keep and Bear Arms, also known as the Second Amendment Foundation. Their website is www.saf.org. You can find him on Twitter and lots of stuff about him and his Patreon page too on @Cam Edwards. That is correct. Cam, how are you today? It's good to have you on NOQ Report News Update. How are you?
I'm good, Bill. Appreciate the invite, man.
And my pleasure, my pleasure. Well, listen, there's interesting news. I was stunned to hear that a California federal judge slaps down a assault weapons ban. Is this real? My gosh, tell us about that.
Yeah, this is real, and it is absolutely beautiful. Judge Roger Benitez delivered a 94-page opinion on Friday afternoon declaring that the state of California's ban on so-called assault weapons violates the constitutional rights of residents. And what's really great about this opinion, Bill, is that he gave the simple explanation as to why this is unconstitutional, and then he went into great detail refuting every one of the state of California's arguments about why this ban should be upheld. So the simple version is, according to Judge Benitez, look, the Supreme Court has said that firearms that are in common use by lawful Americans, those are protected items. And he said, look, the AR-15, there are twice as many AR-15s than there are Ford F-150 pickup trucks. And nobody's arguing that Ford F-150s are exceedingly rare things. We've got more than 20 million of these firearms in the hands of law-abiding Americans. They're using them for recreation. They're using them for competition. They're using them for self-defense. They're using them for hunting. These are all lawful activities. They're in common use. Therefore, California's gun ban is unconstitutional. But then again, he went through and said, all right, if you don't like that opinion, let me give you some more arguments. So California says, well, these guns are battlefield weapons of war. And Judge Benitez points out, no, they're not. These are semi-automatic firearms. These, no military in the United States equips their service members with AR-15s. State of California argued, well, these guns are uniquely dangerous. And he said, no, they're not. They're actually not used in a lot of crimes. As a matter of fact, twice as many Americans are killed with fists and feet than by rifles of any kind. So they're not particularly dangerous things. He just, laid out every argument that the gun control advocates made, and then just, no pun intended, shot each and every one of those arguments down.
I love it. Hey, maybe he can become in his spare time, he can work to the Second Amendment Foundation.
Well, so here's the funny thing. This is not Judge Benitez's first really good opinion when it comes to the right to keep and bear arms. He was the judge who, a few years ago, declared that California's ban on so-called high-capacity magazines was unconstitutional. And for a week, you could buy magazines of any size in the state of California. Gun owners called that Freedom Week. And a lot of them nicknamed Judge Benitez Saint Benitez for coming to the defense of gun owners. Yeah, so, he's 70 years old. He's probably going to retire from the bench at some point. I don't know what the future holds for Judge Benitez, but I imagine the Second Amendment Foundation will be very happy to bring him on.
Yeah, make a couple of phone calls. Let's put out some feelers.
We need him on the bench right now, though. That's the thing. We can't have him retire right now. We need him exactly.
You can't make this stuff up. Yeah. You can't make this stuff up, man. I mean, amazing. I love it. And what really bothers me is this. To go a little bit outside the box, Cam, I look and see this incredible situation where our government telling us we may only need 4 pounds of beef per year. And there's so much food and wild game to hunt. We got feral hogs. We've got, nutria, infestation in like 9 or 10 states. We got coyotes. I mean, I guess you saute them right and marinated properly. It's not too bad, right? What's wrong with
coyotes
us?
Coyotes would be pretty far down on my list of critters to consume. But, If I had to, I'd rather listen. I'll put it this way: I'd rather eat a coyote than a vegan hot dog.
Yeah, I'm with you on that one, man. It's too much. I mean, my gosh. Really, literally, the way that, and I know that you probably don't have a feral hog problem in Virginia, but in Texas, not
Oh
yet.
yeah,
In Texas, it's hellacious. In other states, they're destroying agriculture. You know,
yep,
they're
absolutely.
nobody's friend. I mean, who cries for a little porky that weighs 250 pounds on the side of the road, man? I mean, he's been attacking humans and maybe killing pets. I mean, gosh. So, well, that's good news. That's one thing out of the gate. That's great. And I suppose that's, of course, that's something that's nationwide, right?
So this is going to apply right now to California, and it's going to be appealed by the state of California. So nothing changes on the ground in the state of California yet. However, I say over the course of the next, let's say, 3 years. I mean, this is the first round in a court fight that's going to go up to the Ninth Circuit. It could go en banc to the Ninth Circuit after that, and then it'll get up to the Supreme Court. It's probably a 3-year long process. But in the meantime, Bill, the Supreme Court has already, accepted a case challenging New York's carry laws. And that's going to provide the justices on the Supreme Court the opportunity to really deliver a substantive message to all these lower courts out there. Quit abusing the Second Amendment. Here's the standard of review that needs to be used. You can't just uphold every gun control law because you think that the state, has the authority to try to improve public safety. That doesn't give them carte blanche to infringe on the rights of gun owners. So I think that by the time this case ultimately ends up before the Supreme Court, we're going to have a couple of other really good cases in the books that will limit the types of gun control laws that states like California can try to put in place.
Right, that's great. And I mean, of course, then people say, well, what about crazy people with guns in schools? Okay, fine. Which leads me to the second news item update is this Texas Governor Abbott signs into law a permitless concealed carry law. Oh my gosh, isn't that nice? I mean, the idea is if everybody has a concealed carry, every adult, some guy goes berserk, he's history, he's toast, right? Who's going to want to do that if everybody's got a gun?
Yeah, I don't know that that's actually the impetus for the permitless carry as much as it is trying to remove another barrier between folks and their right to keep and bear arms. Governor Abbott, by the way, has not yet signed this bill. He has said that he will. It has passed the legislature. It's on his desk, but he hasn't officially signed it yet. But yeah, I mean, this is huge news. Texas becomes the 21st state in the country to remove the requirement that somebody get a concealed carry license before they can lawfully carry. So if you can legally own a gun in the state of Texas, once this law takes effect, you'll be able to legally carry a firearm as well, which makes sense. And by the way, Bill, the gun control advocates, they hate this stuff. They always, it's the wild, wild west. Oh, it's going to be Mad Max. Look, nothing.
Yeah, so what? It's great. The Wild West was fantastic.
Well, but that's the thing. The sky doesn't fall when states like West Virginia or Oklahoma or Alaska or Tennessee, or I could keep going on and on. When these states pass constitutional carry, life goes on as normal, right? It doesn't end every violent crime. We're not saying that it does, but it does, again, allow individuals to exercise their Second Amendment rights without having to pay a government fee to do so.
Hey, I don't want to spoil it, but you have a butterfly on your cap. I think it's cool, man.
This is actually,
I gotta bring this to the attention. Yeah, man, it's cool. It says, it says Second Amendment Foundation. That's pretty shameless.
That's right. This is I guess that's the drawback of doing a live interview here in a office with open windows. It's about 90 degrees here in Virginia, and I can't have my air conditioner on while we're talking.
That's fine.
Crack open the windows, and now I got people calling me on the phone. It's all kinds of crazy.
But it shows that creation is at home with Second Amendment advocates, right? They feel comfortable. Right. They feel safe.
That's right. I'm like, who is the Disney princess who walked through the woods? Was that Snow White? I just had the little birds landing on my hand and stuff. Yeah.
Well, St. Francis would be there with the birds eating out of his hand. Same thing.
That's right.
Well, that's good. So let me ask you a question. What does this all mean from the standpoint of populism, of people wanting to take back their countries at a time when we have the two people who are really seem to be dead set against the Bill of Rights. What do you think it's going to lead us to? I mean, Texas is a special state. California is different. Texas is its own republic. They can secede from the union. That was part of the deal when they became a state, right? So, what do you see the Supreme Court ruling on this, and how activism will respond either way?
Yeah, so I think the first case we're going to see from the Supreme Court is going to be that New York case. It'll probably be about a year from now before the Supreme Court issues its opinion. You can expect oral arguments to be held in the fall, maybe late fall, and then they'll take a few months to write this opinion. But I think ultimately what you're going to see is the Supreme Court come down on the side of the right of the people to keep and bear arms. At least that's certainly the expectation with the current makeup of the court. As for how these laws impact populism, I got to say, Bill, I mean, we've had a really good year at the state level in terms of, strong Second Amendment bills. Gun control advocates, they can't really say the same thing. I mean, there's not a single state legislature that has passed a ban on assault weapons this year. I'm not aware of any state so far that has passed a ban on, quote unquote, large capacity magazines. They've been sort of nibbling at the edges, going after like gun storage laws or maybe in some cases open carry bans, right? Things of that nature. But I think the Democrats know that, look, we've had 8.5 million new gun owners over the course of 2020, millions more in 2021. They can look at the polls that see cratering support for new gun laws, and they know that their agenda is not a popular one among the American people, including, by the way, a growing number of Democrats. So, I think we are flexing our Second Amendment muscles when we go out and we purchase a firearm, when we join an organization like the Second Amendment Foundation, when we call our lawmakers and say, listen, I want you to get behind constitutional carry. And millions of gun owners around the country are doing these things. And I think it's paying off. So, look, our challenges are there. We've got an administration in D.C. that is incredibly hostile to our right to keep and bear arms. The Democrat Party is as anti-Second Amendment as it has ever been. But despite those challenges, we also have a lot going for us as well, including, again, those numbers of new American gun owners swelling the ranks of Second Amendment activists. And I think we've got a fighting chance against any gun control legislation that Democrats try to impose.
Hey, yeah, I'm thinking out loud. I wonder what percentage of those new concealed weapons and firearms are Democrats. I just wonder. I mean, it's got to be that they see all this mayhem in the streets, and I think that this is creating kind of a strategic firewall politically against more incursions against the Second Amendment. People want to be able to protect themselves. They're defunding the police, and my gosh, what have you got then? You call 911, they say, sorry, no funding.
Listen, I think you're right, but here's what's really interesting about this. So not only are you seeing those, let's call them law and order Democrats, right? The ones who aren't in favor of abolishing the police or reimagining public safety, they're watching violent crime go up in their cities and they're saying, all right, I want to be able to protect myself. I'm going to go out and buy a gun. But then you also have those far left activists who do want to defund the police. And they're not in favor of gun control either, because every new gun control law you put on the books is an excuse for the police to go out and arrest somebody, right? And typically, these laws are most widely enforced in Democrat-run cities against minorities. So every one of these gun control measures, I think, has a racist outcome. And so, I think you're starting to see, even on the left, support for gun control sort of fracture. And I suspect that within the next year or two, the gun control movement is really going to be the sort of, redheaded stepchild of the left. Like, it just doesn't fit naturally with the rest of the left's agenda.
Too bad.
Yeah, right. Horrible. Oh, absolutely. Horrible.
No lost tears here. Well, that's great. I mean, it's an exciting thing. And I wanted to ask you, because this is coming up in people's heads, they see these incredibly, they're disturbing headlines about people who go berserk and all that. Give me a good set of apologetics, good answers for people who say, well, then you get people that they can go off and they can shoot up a shopping center, or they can go into a meeting at a school, or they can go into a shopping mall anywhere, or a restaurant, and just shoot it up. Give me a good response. And you're somebody who's thought about this a lot. You've dealt with the issues, Cam. Give me a good response, and people can just immediately whip out kind of a rhetorical weapon at
Sure.
their disposal.
Well, I mean, look, the honest response is look at the shooting in San Jose that happened a couple of weeks ago. And the perpetrator of this attack abided by every one of California's gun control laws. And none of those laws prevented that attack from taking place. You can't try to ban your way to safety in these circumstances. I mean, these types of events are incredibly rare. So it's like, casting a net over every law-abiding gun owner in the hopes of ensnaring a criminal or somebody with evil intention. I think what this really demonstrates is that we've got a mental health crisis in this country. And it's something that Democrats don't want to deal with. It costs money to actually build more psychiatric inpatient beds. And you look at these shortages that we have around the country, and it is acute. I mean, you've got people who are literally in crisis. And when they ask for help, the best that the state can do is to put them in a jail cell for a couple of days until maybe a bed opens up at a facility and they can be checked out by a doctor. Pathetic. Now it is pathetic. And I don't, I'm not talking about universal health care or things of that nature, but when you've got somebody in crisis, the state is supposed to act. And the gun control solution is, well, let's have a red flag law. Let's take their guns away and leave them with their knives and their pills and their matches and their gasoline, and don't deal with the actual person in crisis whatsoever. Gun control is a distraction from the real solutions that we need to be engaging in. And when it comes to stopping these types of, random mass casualty events, the best way to do that is by addressing mental health and ensuring that those folks in crisis can get the help that they need.
And exactly. And this brings to mind, of course, the epidemic of knifings and knife killings in the United Kingdom, which is stunning. And so what are we going to do? Are we going to make it, you have to have a concealed carry permit for a steak knife? Come on, man.
In England.
Or a car.
And listen, in England, I mean, and this goes back a decade or more. I mean, you've got campaigns to stop the sale of sharp, pointy knives. They actually want rounded blades on all knives that were sold. Right? And you can't get a chef's knife. I mean,
you have to have a permit to get a butter knife.
Exactly, and that is the ridiculous end to a ban and arrest our way to safety strategy. I mean, it's absolutely absurd. In a nation with 100 million gun owners and with a constitutional right to own these firearms, there is no way. I don't care what your opinion is on the Second Amendment. There's no way that you can ban your way to safety.
No, it's impossible. It's a little bit like spending your way to prosperity. Doesn't make sense. Well, listen, Cam, before I let you go on the NOQ Report News Update, I wanted to ask you, give us your Patreon. You're doing a lot of good work to protect our rights. What's your Patreon account, please?
You bet. It is just patreon.com/Cam Edwards. Now, listen, I will tell you, the Patreon page is mostly non-2A stuff. My wife and I do a podcast we call Foul Language. Since we live on a farm, we've got chickens, we've got a rooster as our mascot. It is not safe for work. We do work blue on that podcast. But if you want the 2A stuff each and every day, I'm still doing Bearing Arms Cam and Company. You can find us on rumble.com, YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Amazon Podcasts. And then, of course, check out Second Amendment Foundation at saf.org and the Citizens Committee for the Right to Keep and Bear Arms at ccrkba.org.
Awesome. Cam Edwards from the Second Amendment Foundation. You are the man. Thanks a lot for being on the NOQ Report News Update. Look forward to doing it again, Cam.
Me too. So I'm going to go try to find that butterfly.
Yes, sir. Get him. Bye.